Throughout history, we fought against the gods. We defied superstition. We fought against kings. We overthrew tyranny. And yet here we are in 2025, forced to fight again, not just against gods, not just against kings, but against a system that fuses both into one. Christian nationalism is not a religion. It's a power structure. It's not about faith. It's about domination. It's the weaponization of beliefs to seize control, enforce laws, and erase human rights. It's a weaponized movement, a movement that has hijacked democracy, infiltrated power, and stripped away rights in the name of faith. And too many people are still sitting around waiting for politicians, courts, or institutions to save us. We've been waiting for too long. It's the ballot or the boot on our neck. We either take power or we get buried beneath their theocracy. It's time to replace the illusions of gods and kings with something real: secular power, human liberation, and unapologetic resistance. And let's be clear, this is war. We don't have time for moderate voices or respectable debates. We're not waiting for politicians, we're not waiting for courts, and we're sure as hell not waiting for permission. We take power by any means necessary. This is the Secular Resistance Playbook. This is a step-by-step strategy to shut Christian nationalism down and take power back. Let's get to work. Take over local power structures. If Christian nationalists are infiltrating school boards, city councils, and state legislatures, we take these positions ourselves. We need to be running for local office, not just high-level positions, but school boards, county commissions, city councils, even the library boards. This is where policies like book bans, prayer in schools, and curriculum changes happen. We also need to be packing out the local meetings. Christian nationalists show up en masse to city and state meetings. So should we. Outnumber them. Take the microphone, shape policy, make noise. Saturate advisory committees. Every government has boards that shape policy. Non-believers should dominate them. The key move here is don't just vote, control the system. They're using it against us. Let's use it against them. Build and fund secular power centers. Christian nationalists have mega churches that serve as funding and mobilization hubs. We need equivalents. And I want to highlight here that mega churches don't just include the flashy prosperity gospel faith healers. It also includes denominational anchors such as the Southern Baptist Convention, the United Methodist Church, Catholics, and even the Presbyterians. We need to develop secular community hubs, create secular meetup spaces, activism groups, and organizing centers, establish financial engines, build nonprofit organizations, crowdfunding networks, and donor bases that rival churches. Stop depending on YouTube, Patreon, or even corporate sponsors. We have to create self-funding platforms. We also need to form independent political machines. Christian nationalists have their own PACs, lobbying firms, and lawyers. We need our own that directly fund and organize hard-hitting, proactive secular activism. We have to start fighting forward instead of just pushing back. The key move here is we need to own our infrastructure. Stop fighting on their turf. We also need to create a culture of resistance. Christian nationalism wins because it makes resistance seem futile. Change that narrative. Refuse to be respectable. The polite, measured approach has failed. Be loud, be assertive, be unapologetic. Disrupt their events. They disrupt school board meetings, we disrupt theirs. They push Christian laws, we push atheist, humanist, and secular laws. Undermine religious recruitment. Christian nationalism thrives on young people. Offer secular mentorships, alternatives to faith-based programs, and direct interventions for those questioning their beliefs. The key move here is to make it costly for them to push their agenda. Make secularism loud, proud, and impossible to ignore. Weaponize media and narrative control. Christian nationalists have Fox News, Daily Wire, and endless online propaganda. We need an equivalent secular counter media. We need to create relatable, hard-hitting content. Stop hyper-focusing on debate and deconstruction. Make viral, culture-driven media that slams Christian nationalism. Use the algorithm against them. Flood social media with counter-messaging. Use YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram to reclaim cultural influence. And I want to go off script here just for a moment to highlight that counter-messaging isn't just responding to what they're putting out there. It's putting the message out that we need people to resonate with. Think about that. Fund and back bold voices. Christian nationalists have media personalities, influencers, and talking heads. We need our own who are given resources to amplify the secular message, make their noise irrelevant. The key move here is to own the narrative, control the culture, drown out their propaganda. Use lawfare. Sue and bankrupt them into retreat. Christian nationalists use the courts to push religious laws, force prayer into schools, and restrict rights. Turn the legal system into a weapon against them. Flood courts with lawsuits. Every time a school board sneaks in prayer, a public official promotes Christianity, or a government office pushes faith, sue them. Make them bleed money. Hold churches financially accountable. Push for aggressive audits, tax scrutiny, and financial investigations into religious organizations violating nonprofit laws. Demand transparency. Christian organizations hide their finances. Expose them, force public accountability, and cut off their funding sources. The key move here is make every illegal theocratic action come with a legal and financial consequence. Now, this is a big one. Create secular mutual aid and direct action networks. Christian nationalists maintain power because people depend on them for charity, food banks, addiction help, and social services. Build secular aid groups, organize networks that help the poor, provide legal defense, offer mentorship, and give real-world support without religious strings attached. Challenge church monopolies on charity. Expose how religious charities use aid to coerce and manipulate people into faith. Develop parallel support systems. Create secular alternatives to religious rehab centers, housing programs, and community support services. And once we do this, we'll discover that it's not just religion that we're running parallel to, but government itself. So the key move here is to break their monopoly on social support. Give people an alternative. Go after their weaknesses, divide and conquer. Christian nationalism isn't as unified as it looks. Exploit their fractures, expose internal hypocrisy. Many Christian nationalist leaders are corrupt, financially dishonest, and abusive. Leverage that to erode their credibility. Turn denominations against each other. Evangelicals, Catholics, Orthodox groups, and fundamentalists do not agree on everything. Amplify those divisions, destabilize their internal power structures, challenge their leadership, call out their failures, and force their institutions into crisis. The key move here is to break them from the inside while hitting from the outside. Train for direct action, not just online debates. Christian nationalists don't just talk about their beliefs, they mobilize around them. Train in grassroots organizing. Every concerned non-believer should know how to mobilize people, fundraise, and strategize for local, national, and global impact. Form protest teams. They show up at courthouses, capitals, and businesses. So do we, in bigger numbers, with stronger messaging and louder voices. Adopt nonviolent disruption tactics. Organize mass disruptions, walkouts, and counter events to make Christian nationalism costly and unsustainable. The key move here is to stop just debating, start organizing and mobilizing. Build movements that take real-world action. Radicalize the next generation of secular activists. Learn how to pass the baton. Christian nationalism indoctrinate kids from birth. The secular movement must provide safe options for people to escape. Get in schools and universities. Push for secular student groups, humanist organizations, and anti-theocratic education programs. Offer leadership training. Build programs that teach young secular activists how to debate, organize, and take political action. Create secular mentorship networks. Give young people role models who are powerful, outspoken, and unafraid to challenge religious oppression. The key move here is raise a generation that won't be silenced, guilted, or manipulated. Win the war of attrition. Christian nationalists keep power because millions stay religious simply because they have no other option for community and purpose. Religion thrives because it provides connection, structure, and identity. It fills social and psychological needs that secular spaces have failed to address at scale. If we want to dismantle Christian nationalism, we must replace, not just remove, their monopolies on social support, purpose, and belonging. How we win is to create a secular social fabric. Religion offers community. We need secular spaces that do the same. We need to establish secular community hubs where people can gather, organize, and support one another without religious baggage. We need to build humanist social groups, mentorship programs, and alternative holiday celebrations to provide real-world connection outside of churches. We also need to develop secular institutions that serve the public, expand secular recovery programs to replace faith-based addiction support groups like AA, launch secular crisis response teams, mental health support networks, and advocacy organizations that match or surpass church-based aid programs. Provide secular parenting and childcare resources so that families aren't forced into religious education systems. And then compete with religious charity systems. Churches don't just spread faith, they control food banks, disaster relief, and social services. We must fund and develop secular aid networks that can provide support without religious coercion. Establish secular financial assistance programs for vulnerable populations so they don't have to turn to faith-based organizations for survival. Make secularism culturally attractive. Religion holds power not just through politics, but through entertainment, music, art, and media. We must invest in secular artists, musicians, filmmakers, and content creators to normalize non-belief in mainstream culture. Create secular rites of passages, coming-of-age ceremonies, weddings, memorial services that offer meaning without supernatural beliefs. That way we show that life without religion isn't just possible, it's better. The key move here is to make secularism a dominant force, not just in politics, but in culture, community, and everyday life. So the big point here is to stop asking, start taking. Stop begging, start doing. Stop worrying, start working. Christian nationalism isn't waiting for permission. They're taking power. They're packing courts, seizing local government, controlling schools, pushing religious laws, using fear and guilt as weapons. They are winning because they are ruthless. So the question isn't, what can we do? It's what are we willing to do? And I tell you what, we fight forward. We disrupt their strongholds. We build our own institutions. We bankrupt their power. We do whatever it takes by any means necessary. Christian nationalists want you to believe that resistance is futile, that they're too powerful, that they've already won. But history tells a different story. Every empire that tried to crush dissent failed. Every system that tried to control thought collapsed. Every ruler who tried to declare themselves divine was torn down. They are not invincible, but we must be relentless. This is our time. This is our fight, and history will ask what we did when Christian nationalism came again to strip away our humanity. Did we watch or did we resist? Did we comply or did we organize? Did we beg for our freedom or did we take it? Because if we don't fight forward, if we don't seize power, if we don't stop playing by their rules, then our children and their children will live in a world where gods and kings rule over humans once again. This is not a time for fear. This is not a time for waiting, nor is this a time for passivity. This is a time for action. You already know what's at stake. Now decide what you're going to do about it. This is the Secular Resistance Playbook, and if you're with me, let's go. Join the movement that's already in progress, and together we can put the final nail in the coffin of the time of gods and kings. Subscribe to our email list to express your readiness to resist, and start joining us on Sundays, where we are actively building a global community hub that is already challenging the narrative and changing the game. Until next time, keep rising.